What if I told you that the specific verbs, the literal words you reach for every morning to describe your routine,
Right.
like how you interact with your alarm clock, your closet, or your coffee maker, what if I said those exact words could accurately predict your risk of complete mental burnout by, 3 in the afternoon?
I mean, it sounds almost like linguistic astrology when you phrase it that way.
Yeah.
But there really is a profound underlying truth to it. We rarely think about the vocabulary of our own mundane existence. We just live it. But the words we choose, they are actually the invisible scaffolding of our reality.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We have a highly unusual, just an incredibly fascinating mission for you today.
We really do.
Normally, you and I are parsing through, dense, impenetrable academic papers.
Yeah.
We're usually untangling complex historical events or, breaking down cutting-edge astrophysics. We live in the weeds of high-level information.
Yeah, the heavy stuff.
Exactly. But today, we are doing something entirely different. Today, we are pointing the microscope directly at something so painfully common, so universally experienced, that we have all gone completely blind to it. We are exploring the hidden psychological complexities of our daily routines.
And to do this, our source material today is brilliant precisely because of its simplicity. We are not looking at a peer-reviewed journal.
No, definitely not.
We're looking at a transcript from a YouTube video created by the Mr. English channel.
Right, which is just amazing.
It is. This is a video featuring a very straightforward conversation between two fictional people, Emily and Paul, who are simply discussing how they get through an average day. It was originally designed as practical conversation practice for absolute beginners who are learning the English language.
But here's where we elevate this, where it gets absolutely fascinating. Our goal today isn't just to passively sit back, relax, and hear a cute little story about two people navigating a Tuesday.
No, not at all.
The mission today is for you, the listener, to actively master daily routine vocabulary by treating this beginner English conversation like a profound psychological text. We are going to audit these words. We want you to actively participate in this learning process with us, because when you strip a language down to its absolute bare bones, something magical happens.
You remove all the intellectual camouflage.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, when you strip away the jargon, the complex sentence structures, and you are left with just the fundamental verbs and the basic adjectives of daily survival, you get a staggeringly clear, almost uncomfortably precise picture of who a person really is at their core.
So let's introduce the cast of characters for this psychological audit. On one side of the spectrum, we have Paul. Paul is the self-proclaimed, unapologetic, not a morning person.
Emphatically not a morning person.
Right. He is a man who, as we will discover later in this deep dive, somehow manages to literally burn water.
Still trying to figure that one out.
It's incredible. He is chaotic, he is tired, and he is entirely reactive. And then on the exact opposite side, we have Emily. Emily is a highly organized, sun-greeting, salad-making, proactive morning person.
They are the absolute perfect archetypes for this exploration. They contrast so sharply, so violently almost in their approaches to existence, that together they give us a full 360-degree spectrum of daily life vocabulary.
As I was reading through this transcript, I realized something. I like to think of Paul and Emily not just as two different people, but as the two conflicting hemispheres of your own brain.
Okay, I like that.
Think about it. You, listening to this right now, you have an Emily inside you. Emily is that side of your brain that wants to conquer the world at dawn. She's the executive function, the side that buys expensive planners, promises to meal prep on Sundays, and sets goals.
Right, the aspirational self.
Exactly. But you also have a Paul. Paul is the lizard brain. He is the side that hits the snooze button until the absolute last possible second of existence. The side that considers, like a chocolate chip cookie, to be a valid structural coping mechanism for the stress of being alive.
We've all been there.
Oh, totally. You are constantly oscillating between Emily and Paul.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, studying Paul and Emily isn't just about learning or reviewing the English words for what they do. It's about recognizing the universal human experiences those words represent. It's an anthropological dig into our own habits.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning. To truly understand the vocabulary of daily life, we have to start exactly where the day starts. We have to start with that jarring, unavoidable moment that cleaves humanity into two distinct groups. The alarm clock.
The great initiator.
Yes.
The alarm clock is the inciting incident of the daily narrative. And the sensory vocabulary used in our source perfectly illustrates the immediate divide between our two characters. Let's look at the auditory vocabulary, the words used to describe sound.
Okay, let's do it.
Paul's morning is defined by a harsh, aggressive sound. He describes his alarm using pure onomatopoeia. He says beep, beep, beep. He doesn't say it plays a melody. He explicitly uses the adjective loud. His alarm is just loud.
It's an assault. It is a physiological attack on his senses. When you read that phrase, beep, 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 you can almost feel the cortisol, the stress hormone, just flooding his system.
Yeah, exactly.
He is being dragged from unconsciousness by a digital siren. And then you look at Emily. Emily's alarm is described as soft music.
Right, a totally different vibe.
Completely. But even more importantly, she doesn't focus on the sound of the alarm. She focuses on the environment. She focuses on the absence of sound. She tells Paul she wakes up before the sun, and the paramount adjective she uses is quiet.
Yeah.
She says the house is very quiet. She notes there are no cars and no noise.
This is where we see language framing reality. Emily frames the beginning of her existence with peaceful, expansive adjectives. She owns the morning. Paul frames his with disruptive, invasive ones.
Because the morning is attacking him.
Exactly. Look at Paul's immediate internal dialogue upon hearing that loud beep. He says his first thought is, oh no, already. He is instantly, from the very first second of the day, in a state of deep existential resistance.
Which brings us to the physical manifestation of that resistance. The most universally understood piece of modern technology, the snooze button.
Oh, the snooze button.
Paul doesn't just wake up. He engages in a negotiation with a piece of plastic. And the specific verb he uses here is absolutely crucial. He says, I press the snooze button.
Press. It's an active verb used for technology, but here it represents the ultimate procrastination loop. Paul tells himself he is pressing it for, quote, 5 more minutes, but he freely admits to Emily that those 5 minutes inevitably turn into another 5 minutes.
It's a cascading failure of the morning routine.
It really is.
It's the Paul side of the brain demanding immediate gratification. The logic is completely flawed. We all know that the sleep you get between hitting snooze is terrible, fragmented, anxious sleep. You aren't actually resting.
Not at all.
But Paul is so desperate to avoid the reality of the beep, beep, beep that he chooses the illusion of rest.
He is trading long-term stability for short-term avoidance. But eventually, physics and economics dictate that they both have to actually leave the mattress. And the verbs they use for this physical transition out of the bed are wonderfully telling. However, before we get to the kinetic movement of leaving the bed, let's talk about the first major hurdle of the day once gravity takes over. The vocabulary of sustenance and wardrobe. Let's look at breakfast.
Oh man, the breakfast divide is staggering. Let's analyze the food vocabulary used here. Paul's breakfast is entirely defined by a single adjective: fast.
Fast? Why?
Because he has trapped himself in that cascading failure of the snooze button loop. He has effectively stolen his own time. He says he eats toast with butter or maybe a banana. The key here is the brutal simplicity. It requires zero preparation.
And notice the verb. Paul says, I eat toast. It is entirely passive. He is just consuming whatever is immediately available with the lowest barrier to entry.
Yeah, whatever is in grabbing distance.
Exactly. Now compare that to Emily's elaborate, almost luxurious morning meal. She says she eats yogurt with fruit, or sometimes I make eggs.
I make eggs. That is an action of creation.
Precisely. Emily says I make. She is actively bringing a meal into existence. She has the time, because she didn't hit the snooze button because she woke up to the quiet, to engage in a process.
Right.
This active versus passive approach to the morning doesn't just stop at breakfast. It bleeds directly into the next major daily task, which is a massive source of anxiety for many, the clothing dilemma.
The closet. The universal void. Emily looks in her closet and she describes a scene of absolute abundance. She lists her options, running through the plural nouns of fashion: shirts, pants, dresses.
But this abundance doesn't bring her joy.
No, it creates massive friction. She says she looks at all these clothes and always thinks, I have nothing to wear.
Which is, on its face, a complete paradox. She has a closet physically overflowing with garments, yet she experiences a feeling of scarcity. She finds the act of choosing incredibly difficult.
I have to ask you about this because this is where the Emily side of our brain actually kind of short circuits. Why does having more options, like Emily's packed closet with all the shirts, pants, and dresses, often lead to more stress? Because when you contrast this with Paul's system is aggressively simple, and he seems completely, totally unbothered by getting dressed.
What we are looking at here through Emily's vocabulary is the psychological phenomenon of decision fatigue. Human beings only have a finite reserve of mental energy to expend on decision-making each day.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, every single choice, no matter how small, blue pants or black pants, skirt or dress, depletes that reserve. Emily is spending a significant amount of her highly valuable morning cognitive energy right out of the gate, just deciding how to present herself to the world. Paul, conversely, has engineered a behavioral system to completely bypass decision fatigue.
Yes, we need to break down Paul's wardrobe system, because I honestly think, despite all his chaos, he is a borderline genius in this one specific area. Paul states that he only owns blue shirts, white shirts, and gray shirts. That is his entire professional aesthetic.
He has systematically eliminated the variable of choice. And because he has removed the need to choose, listen to the fantastic kinetic verb he uses to describe his process. He says, I grab one, done.
Just done.
He doesn't carefully select, he doesn't curate, he grabs.
Grab is such an unsophisticated, almost primal verb. A bear grabs a fish out of a river. Paul grabs a blue shirt out of a closet.
Exactly. And his underlying philosophy for this primal action is profound in its simplicity. He tells Emily, thinking is for later.
Thinking is for later. I genuinely want that printed on a t-shirt. Or maybe just a plain gray shirt.
It's just a gray shirt, yeah.
It is a brilliant self-awareness. He is actively preserving his cognitive load for the actual demands of the workday. He knows his Paul brain is going to be tired because he's not a morning person. He knows he just fought a war with the snooze button, so he removes every single obstacle between the mattress and the front door.
The vocabulary perfectly mirrors their internal mental states. Emily is engaged in high-level, complex cognitive processing. She uses verbs like choosing, finding, thinking. Paul is operating purely on baseline survival instincts. Pressing snooze, grabbing a shirt, eating a fast banana.
Okay, I think this is the perfect moment to halt our conversation for a second. We've thrown a lot of foundational vocabulary out there, and we want to do a mental exercise with you. Yes, you the listener. We are going to do a quick interactive verb audit.
Sounds good.
I'm going to describe a scenario we just analyzed from Paul and Emily's morning, and I'll pause. I want you to instantly summon the verb that fits. Don't overthink it. Just feel the kinetic energy of the word based on what we've discussed. Speak it out loud if you can, or just lock it into your mind.
This is a highly effective way to move this vocabulary from passive understanding to active recall.
Let's do this. Audit prop number 1. When Paul is running incredibly late, his cortisol is spiking because of that cascading snooze button failure. What highly active verb phrase does he use to describe the physical act of leaving his mattress? I'll give you a second.
Think about that sudden movement.
Did you get it? He jumps out of bed. He doesn't step out, he doesn't climb out, he doesn't roll out, he jumps. It is a full-body reaction to sheer panic.
The verb jump implies a sudden, explosive, energetic movement. It is driven entirely by the adrenaline of realizing he has failed his morning timeline.
Exactly. Audit prompt number 2. Think back to the technology of the morning. What specific verb does Paul use when he is negotiating for 5 more minutes of sleep? How does he interact with the alarm?
The physical action.
The verb is presses. He presses the snooze button.
We press buttons, we press keys on a keyboard, we press elevator panels. It is the foundational verb of the digital age. It implies applying localized physical pressure to trigger a mechanical or digital response.
Final audit for this segment. Prompt number 3. What verb does Emily use when describing her very first, highly anticipated action involving her morning beverage? Think about her level of eagerness compared to Paul's panic.
What does she do?
She runs from the bed to the coffee machine.
Which is such a brilliant, illuminating contrast to Paul jumping out of bed. They are both using high-energy verbs, but the motivation is entirely different. Emily is running towards something she deeply desires, the ritual of the coffee. Paul is jumping to escape the consequence of being late.
Right. One is driven by reward, the other by fear.
Exactly.
And speaking of that coffee, the vocabulary of consumption reveals even more. Paul likes his coffee strong and black. He explicitly says no milk, no sugar. It is just pure, unadulterated chemical fuel to offset the fatigue.
Just medicinal at that point.
Totally. But Emily, who actually has the time to experience her morning, takes hers with a little hot milk. She uses the adjectives very warm and nice. She is experiencing comfort. Paul is self-medicating. But eventually, once those clothes are on, whether they were carefully curated from a massive closet or blindly grabbed from a rag of gray shirts, and the caffeine is consumed, our characters have to leave the sanctuary of the home.
They must cross the threshold. They are moving from the private, controlled environment into the public, uncontrollable arena.
Which means we must explore the daily migration. Let's examine the commute because once again, the Emily brain and the Paul brain handle this transition in completely opposite ways. Emily drives her car, but her commute is absolutely nothing like the peaceful, no noise, no cars morning she experienced in her quiet house. She faces terrible traffic.
The vocabulary she uses to describe this traffic is incredibly evocative for anyone who has ever driven in a city. She says there are many cars, and she relies on a highly descriptive rhythmic phrase, stop, go, stop, go.
Stop, go, stop, go. I have been turning this phrase over in my mind since I read the transcript. It's like being on a broken conveyor belt. You are strapped into this 2-ton metal machine that is engineered to transport you smoothly at high speeds, but instead, it just violently jerks forward and then halts over and over.
Yeah, that jarring motion.
I actually think stop, go is perfect, flawless English. It completely strips away all the complex, unnecessary grammar. She doesn't say, well, we constantly accelerate and then rapidly decelerate due to congestion. She just gives you the raw, percussive rhythm of pure frustration.
It is highly effective communication, precisely because it mimics the physical sensation of the event. And to cope with this frustrating rhythm, she employs a sensory strategy. She listens to music, and she specifically adds the adjective loud. She listens to loud music.
Right.
She is using a wall of sound to drown out the stress of her external environment, which is fascinatingly similar to how Paul's loud alarm clock disrupted his peaceful sleep. She is using noise as a shield.
Now let's look at the other side of the coin. Paul's commute. He doesn't drive, he doesn't have the isolation of a car, he takes the bus. And the key adjective he introduces here, which is fundamental to the urban experience, is crowded. He emphasizes the density by saying there are many, many people.
The adjective crowded is essential vocabulary for navigating the world. It describes a space that has exceeded its comfortable capacity. It implies a distinct lack of personal space, a sharing of air and proximity that most humans find inherently uncomfortable. Paul explicitly states, I don't like crowded places.
So how does the Paul brain cope with being surrounded by many, many people in a metal tube? Very similarly to Emily, he uses audio, but he takes a much more isolating physical action. The verb phrase he uses is, I put in my headphones.
Yeah, the physical barrier.
He physically, visibly blocks out the crowd. He creates an architectural barrier in his ears, and he listens to music or podcasts, giving a very clever little meta shout-out to the Mr. English channel itself.
Both Emily and Paul are utilizing digital media to construct a psychological buffer. They are building an invisible fortress between themselves and the deeply unpleasant realities of the morning migration. But eventually, the wheels stop turning. The commute ends. They arrive at the office. And here, despite their vastly different mornings, despite the salads and the grad blue shirts, they enter a perfectly shared universal linguistic environment.
The modern office.
Yeah.
It is genuinely amazing how universal the language of corporate work really is across the entire globe. When asked what their workday is actually like, both Paul and Emily bypass any specific details of their industry and immediately deploy the exact same overarching adjective.
Busy.
Busy is the default setting of the modern professional vocabulary. It is the accepted state of being. And what is the very first action required upon arriving at this perpetually busy environment?
More coffee.
Exactly. The universal dark-roasted lubricant of the global workforce. But let's look at the specific noun-heavy tasks they describe once they reach their desks. They talk about turning on computers, and then they introduce the true, relentless villain of the information age. So many emails.
Notice the paired verbs they use here that form the bedrock of office vocabulary. They have to read emails and they have to write emails. This is the constant, unending inflow and outflow of digital communication. It is a relentless tide.
And when they finally manage to stop reading and writing, what do? They sit in rooms. They're in meetings. Paul mentions he has a meeting about the big report. And when asked to describe what actually happens in this meeting, he distills it to its purest essence. Talking.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
Emily says her day is very similar. She talks to people. She helps people.
This is a masterful distillation of office vocabulary. Desks, computers, emails, meetings, reports. Read, write, talk. It is an endless repeating cycle of consuming information, producing information, and discussing information.
All right, I want to map this directly onto the listener's experience. Let's do another mental audit. Expert, I'll let you take the lead on this one. Let's challenge the listener to construct the architectural blueprint of a standard work routine using the exact nouns we just extracted from Paul and Emily's day. We are mapping the colonization of human existence by 3 specific nouns over the last 30 years.
I would love to. Listener, I'm going to read a sentence that describes a standard sequence of events at almost any office in the world. I will leave 3 blanks in the sentence. When I pause, I want you to mentally supply the missing noun based on the cycle we just discussed. Are you ready?
They're ready.
Here is the sequence. When Paul finally arrives at his desk, the first thing he does is turn on his.
What's the machine?
If you supplied the noun computer, you are tracking perfectly. Let's continue the sequence. Then he has to sit and read and write a lot of...
The digital tide we talked about?
The answer is emails and the final part of the sequence. Later in the afternoon, he spends hours talking to people in them.
Where do they go to talk?
Meetings. Let's look at the entire structure together. When Paul arrives at his desk, the first thing he does is turn on his computer. Then he has to read and write a lot of emails. Later, he spends time talking to people in meetings.
It is so incredibly simple when you break it down like that, but that exact sequence of nouns and verbs is the architectural framework of hundreds of millions of human days around the globe. Turn on computer, read emails, go to meetings.
It's universal.
It really is. But here's the thing about all that mental energy spent filtering those emails and talking in those meetings. It naturally leads to a massive physical deficit. By noon, the human brain is quite literally starved for glucose, which forces Emily and Paul to make their next critical choice.
We are entering the territory of biological necessity, the midday meal.
Let's dive right into lunch. When asked about lunch, Paul doesn't hesitate. He calls it his favorite part of the workday.
Same.
Right, and Emily completely agrees. But their approaches to acquiring this essential glucose are night and day. Emily, true to her executive function character, represents the highly organized approach.
She doesn't rely on chance. She brings her lunch from home. She explicitly uses the verbs make and bring. She tells Paul she makes a salad or a sandwich at home in the morning, and she highlights a key, highly practical benefit of this organized routine using a very important economic adjective, cheap.
Right. She notes that buying lunch every single day is expensive. So let's look at the trade-off. She sacrifices her time in the early morning, time she explicitly manufactured by waking up before the sun and not hitting snooze, to save money and maintain absolute control over her dietary intake. It is a long-term strategic play.
Paul, on the other hand, operates completely differently. He openly, cheerfully admits he is not organized. He embodies the unorganized, reactive approach. He doesn't make food, he buys it. He says he goes to a small cafe near his office and he just buys a sandwich.
Okay, but I want to stop and zero in on this. I want to push back on the idea that Emily's way is the only right way. Because I think there is a hidden, massive psychological benefit hidden inside Paul's totally unorganized routine. We might look at Paul and judge him, thinking, oh, he's spending too much money, he's eating processed cafe food, he's disorganized. But what does Paul physically have to do to acquire that sandwich?
He has to change his environment. He has to leave the building. He explicitly says, I like to walk for 10 minutes, get out of the office.
Exactly. His complete lack of preparation forces him to take a 10-minute walk. He gets fresh air, he gets sunlight on his face, he gets a complete change of scenery away from the computer and the emails.
Yeah, that's huge.
Even Emily, who is the absolute bastion of rigid organization, immediately agrees with him, validating his need to get out of the office. Sometimes, a perfectly optimized, hyper-efficient routine traps you at your desk all day. You eat your cheap, healthy salad while staring at a spreadsheet. Paul's inefficiency, his failure to plan, actually buys him a mandatory mental break.
That is a brilliant observation of behavioral mechanics. It shows how what we label as bad routines can actually have unintended, highly positive psychological consequences. But regardless of whether you are eating a homemade, optimized salad or a reactionary cafe sandwich, there is a universal physiological phenomenon that strikes almost every single worker on the planet, and this transcript captures it flawlessly.
The afternoon energy crash. The source material names a very specific, almost universally dreaded time. 3 p.m. Emily says in the afternoon she gets very sleepy. Paul immediately, passionately agrees, citing exactly 3 p.m. He says, my eyes are heavy. It's that precise moment where the adrenaline of the morning commute and the caffeine from the morning coffee have completely, utterly worn off, and your biology remembers that you are essentially a primate trapped in a chair.
The key vocabulary word introduced here is sleepy. It is important to distinguish this from simply being tired. You can be tired from running a marathon. That is physical exhaustion. But sleepy implies a very specific neurological desire for slumber. It is a drooping of the consciousness. It is the body signaling a need to power down.
So how do our two halves of the brain cope with this 3 p.m. slump? Emily relies on green tea, and she eats an apple, which she describes with a heavily loaded adjective phrase, very healthy.
From a purely physiological standpoint, Emily's choices are highly functional. Green tea contains a moderate amount of caffeine, but it also contains an amino acid called L-theanine, which is known to provide a much more sustained, calm alertness compared to the jittery spike of coffee. And the apple provides natural fructose and complex fiber, ensuring a slow, steady release of energy into her bloodstream. She is managing her biology like a machine.
Then we have Paul. Paul does not go for the slow release of complex natural sugars. Paul eats a cookie.
A cookie. Simple carbohydrates, refined sugars, butter. It is designed to provide an aggressive, immediate spike in blood glucose levels.
Now, I'm going to challenge the conventional wisdom here again. I'm going to push back. We all know, intellectually, that Emily's apple is nutritionally superior. That is not up for debate.
Sure.
But I want you to deeply consider the totality of Paul's day so far. He was violently jarred awake by a horrible, loud beep. He experienced the anxiety of running late. He literally jumped out of bed in panic. He squeezed his body onto a densely crowded bus full of strangers. Is it entirely possible that, purely from a psychological and emotional standpoint, Paul's cookie is actually a fundamentally better immediate mood booster than Emily's apple?
Oh, that's an interesting angle.
Right. Given how stressful and reactive his morning was, doesn't his lizard brain kind of need the profound buttery comfort of that cookie just to survive until 5 p.m.?
That is a very compelling way to synthesize his behavior. You are looking at the holistic emotional cost of his day. What we are seeing here is that their afternoon snacks perfectly, symmetrically mirror their core personalities that were established back in the early morning. Emily is disciplined. Her morning is disciplined. Her lunch is disciplined. Her 3 p.m. snack is disciplined. She consistently makes choices based on long-term outcomes: health, savings, sustained energy.
She is playing the long game.
Paul, however, is relentlessly comfort-seeking. He seeks the immediate comfort of the snooze button when the alarm rings. He seeks the ease of the pre-selected blue shirt so he doesn't have to think. He seeks the comfort of the cafe sandwich. And finally, he seeks the massive, immediate dopamine hit of the cookie. He makes choices entirely based on short-term emotional regulation.
That makes perfect sense. When we read this transcript, we aren't just looking at a list of random foods. We are looking at complex coping strategies disguised as mid-afternoon snacks. But whether you choose to fuel that final stretch of the workday with the slow-release discipline of an apple or the desperate dopamine spike of a cookie, the machinery of the workday inevitably grinds to a halt. The clock finally, mercifully hits 5 p.m.
The end of the corporate cycle. And this initiates the great migration back, the journey back to their private lives, back to the sanctuary.
The great reversal. The commute happens all over again, but the emotional valence, the feeling in the air, has completely shifted. Paul is back on the bus, but he uses a brand new adjective to describe his state of being. Tired. He tells Emily, "I am very tired now. I just look out the window. All the frantic, jumping energy of the morning rush is totally gone. He's no longer fighting the day. He's just a passive observer watching the city roll by."
And Emily is back in her car. The traffic is objectively just as bad as it was in the morning. She says it's still that exact same stop, go rhythm, but her internal emotional state is entirely different. She says, "I am happy because I'm going home."
Context is everything.
It is. The context of the destination completely alters her psychological perception of the frustrating journey.
So they finally arrive at their respective front doors. And I want to spend a moment on the physical actions of arriving, this vital, universal decompression ritual. The transcript spells it out with such beautiful clarity. Think about your own life, you listening to this. What is the very first physical sequence of actions you perform when you walk through your front door after work?
They list a very specific sequence of actions utilizing the phrasal verb put down. Paul says, "I put down my keys, I put down my bag." This isn't just placing items on a table. It is the physical and symbolic unburdening of the tools of the outside world. It is dropping the weight of the day.
It's shedding the armor. You put down the keys, you put down the bag. And speaking of armor, they immediately transition to discussing a vital, almost sacred wardrobe change. This is so universally relatable, it hurts. Paul explicitly talks about taking off his work clothes, specifically calling out that blue shirt again.
Yeah.
And what does he put on?
He says he puts on comfortable clothes. He specifically mentions a t-shirt. Emily agrees enthusiastically, noting the crucial distinction that they aren't pajamas yet, they're just comfortable clothes. This marks a massive psychological boundary in the day.
It really does.
You cannot truly deeply relax in the clothes you wore to the office. The fabric itself carries the stress of the emails and the meetings.
You absolutely cannot. It feels scientifically impossible to relax in a button-down shirt. But once they are finally in those comfortable clothes, they don't immediately get to collapse on the sofa. No, because they must first pay tribute to the true ultimate masters of their homes.
Introduction of the pets. The introduction of Max the dog and Bella the cat provides some of the most dynamic, expressive vocabulary in the entire transcript. Let's look at Emily's dog, Max.
Max is a creature of pure, unadulterated joy. The vocabulary associated with Max is entirely positive and kinetic. The core adjective used to describe him is happy. The active verbs are jumps and barks. Max is an explosion of welcoming energy.
Contrast that manic energy with Paul's cat, Bella. The vocabulary used here is subdued, judgmental, and hilarious. Bella does not jump. Bella does not bark. Paul describes her reaction to his arrival with absolute deadpan precision. She looks at me, she says, meow.
She looks at me. There is so much unspoken judgment packed into that simple phrase. And I absolutely love Paul's interpretation of the single word meow. When Emily asks what the cat means, Paul translates it instantly as if it's a foreign language he is fluent in. It means hello, now give me food.
It's a completely transactional relationship. He is projecting a demanding corporate hierarchy onto his feline, which leads to the highly amusing conclusion both Emily and Paul reach together in the dialogue. The pets are the boss of the house. Max the dog is a happy, energetic micromanager, and Bella the cat is a demanding, aloof CEO.
Which is such a brilliant, funny observation on modern domestic power dynamics. We work all day just to come home and serve smaller, furrier bosses. So the bosses are fed, the comfortable clothes are on. Now the human beings must feed themselves. And here in the kitchen, their paths diverge wildly once again, just as they did at breakfast.
Let's deeply examine their dinner routines by looking at two deeply contrasting, powerful adjectives they use to describe the act of cooking. Relaxing versus stressful.
Emily says cooking is very relaxing for her. She uses verbs of methodical creation and enjoyment. She says she cuts vegetables, she listens to music, she likes to make super pasta. For her, the act of cooking is a seamless extension of her organized, healthy, proactive lifestyle. It's a meditative wind-down activity. She's in control.
But for Paul, the kitchen is a war zone. Cooking is firmly characterized by the adjective stressful. He openly, almost proudly confesses, using a strong intensifier, that he is a very bad cook.
Very bad is an incredible understatement, because Paul provides us with a brief anecdote that is, frankly, legendary in its level of incompetence. He lists things he has historically ruined. He burned the chicken, he burned the rice, and then he drops this incredible, physically impossible sentence into the conversation. One time, I think I burned the water.
Burned the water. From a strict physics and chemistry standpoint, he means he caused total evaporation.
Obviously, yeah.
But the phrasing he uses is fantastic. Emily is understandably shocked by this claim and asks the central logical question, how do you burn water?
And Paul's answer is just a masterpiece of beautiful, oblivious honesty. I don't know, I forgot it. All the water was gone. Listener, I want you to seriously pause and ponder the mechanics of this for a second. How completely distracted, how entirely profoundly removed from the present physical moment do you have to be to turn on a gas or electric stove, place a metal pot of water on it, and then wander off so completely that the water reaches a rolling boil, turns entirely to steam, vanishes completely into the atmosphere, and leaves you with a scorching hot, dangerously empty metal pot.
It speaks to a profound, almost dangerous lack of engagement with the domestic space. His Paul brain is so eager to get out of the kitchen and get to the relaxing part of his evening that he literally genuinely forgets he is currently operating heavy machinery.
I am still just marveling at the humorous extreme of Paul's domestic struggles. Is he a distracted genius or just a danger to society? Either way, because he is an active threat to himself and his cookware, how does he actually survive the evening?
Well, because of his well-documented lack of culinary skills, Paul relies heavily on two specific strategies. First, he cooks incredibly simple, almost childlike things. He mentions boiling pasta with pre-made tomato sauce, or he makes eggs again, falling back on the exact same quick protein he sometimes eats for breakfast.
Right.
Second, and more importantly, he utilizes the vital modern verb phrase, order food.
Yes, the gig economy saves Paul from starvation. He orders pepperoni pizza, which he joyfully considers a great dinner.
So with the dinner situation finally handled, whether it's Emily's scratch-made nutritious vegetable soup or Paul's delivery pizza, the characters finally transition into the absolute final stage of their waking hours.
The wind down. And this final stage provides a perfect architectural template for you, the listener, to practice constructing your own conversational narrative. Let's look at their specific evening activities before we get to the dialogue script audit.
Let's trace Paul's routine first. Surprisingly, given his chaotic nature, he starts by cleaning the kitchen. But immediately after that, it's all about total decompression. He sits on his big red sofa, and Bella the cat, the undisputed boss, re-enters the narrative.
Yes, the CEO claims her territory, she sits on him, and she sleeps. He is trapped. And what does Paul do while physically pinned beneath his feline overlord? He watches TV. Specifically, it mentions he watches funny movies and comedies.
And he provides the crucial psychological why for this action. He doesn't just say he likes them, he says, I need to laugh after a long day.
That's a strong statement.
It is. This connects perfectly seamlessly back to his stressful, panic-inducing morning and his tiring commute. Laughter is his chosen, necessary mechanism for releasing the accumulated tension of navigating the world. It is emotional medicine.
Emily totally agrees that laughing is good. But her routine is, unsurprisingly, much quieter and more introspective. She reads a book, specifically noting she likes stories, which implies fiction, and escape into another world. And then she has an obligation. She has to take Max the dog for a short walk outside.
She says he needs a walk. It's a duty. But she clearly derives deep enjoyment from it, too. She describes the night environment with adjectives like nice and quiet. She engages in a very peaceful, expansive action. She says she looks at the stars.
It's a moment of profound reflection. The world is huge and she is small, and it's quiet. And Paul notes, quite humorously, that his cat does not like walks. So we have this beautiful cinematic contrast between the two. Paul's inside, trapped under a cat on a bright red sofa, laughing at a glowing screen to burn off stress. Emily is outside in the quiet dark, looking up at the vastness of the stars.
Which brings us to the final, inevitable countdown to sleep. And their approaches to ending the day are exactly as divergent as their approaches to beginning it. Emily has a highly structured, almost ritualistic finish to her waking hours.
She goes to bed early, explicitly stating 10 p.m. She lists her sequence of verbs with the precision of a military operation. She brushes her teeth, puts on pajamas, reads in bed for exactly 10 minutes, and then is asleep. The transcript even includes the written stage direction of snapping fingers to demonstrate to the English learner how instantaneously she loses consciousness.
She has optimized her circadian rhythm so thoroughly that sleep is not a struggle. It is an immediate, frictionless transition. Paul's finish to the day, however, is a chaotic mess of poor boundaries.
It is a disaster. He goes to bed late, citing 11:30 p.m. or midnight. And why? Why does he do this to himself? Because he lacks any boundaries with his digital entertainment. He admits he stays up because he wants to watch one more movie or read something on the internet. The Paul brain refuses to let go of the dopamine.
And he recognizes the tragic consequence of this behavior. He agrees with Emily that this exact behavior is what makes him tired the next morning, creating what they explicitly call a big circle. It is a self-perpetuating loop. He stays up late to seek comfort, he is exhausted the next morning, he relies on the snooze button, he is stressed, he needs a cookie to cope at 3 p.m., he needs to laugh at 8 p.m., he stays up late again to reclaim his time.
It is the tragic cycle of the modern human. Emily gently points out that his routine is very funny, while Paul notes, perhaps with a hint of envy, that hers is very organized.
Now, this brings us to the interactive dialogue script breakdown. We want to guide you, the listener, through a mental exercise to create your own conversational script based on this foundational vocabulary. You've spent the last hour hearing us analyze it, now it's time for you to synthesize it for your own life.
Exactly. We are going to highlight the essential sentence structures used by Paul and Emily that you can immediately adopt to talk about your own existence. These are the absolute building blocks of daily human conversation. Let's start with the anchor of the day, the data point that dictates everything else: sleep.
The foundational grammatical structure is incredibly simple. I go to bed at, and then you insert the time. It is a basic subject-verb prepositional phrase. Listener, in your head, practice this right now. If someone asked you, how would you respond? I go to bed at 10 p.m. or I go to bed at midnight. Lock that sentence in.
Got your anchor. Okay, next structure. This is for expressing your preferences during your crucial wind-down time. The structure is, I like to, and then an action verb. Just like Paul saying, I like to watch TV, or Emily saying, I like to read a book. Listener, what do you actually like to do when the day is done? I like to. Fill in the blank with your verb. What is it?
Excellent. And finally, a structure for summarizing your entire day, your overall philosophy of existence. My routine is very... and then an adjective. You could say, my routine is very organized, or my routine is very stressful, or my routine is very busy. What word fits your day?
What I absolutely love about this exercise is how, by combining just a handful of simple verbs, clean, sit, watch, read, brush, you literally paint a complete, vivid picture of a human life. You do not need complex, five-syllable academic words to deeply connect with another person. You just need to accurately, honestly describe what you do when you open your eyes in the morning and what you do right before you close them at night.
That is the immense hidden power of foundational vocabulary. It is the connective tissue of all human interaction. It is how we relate to each other's struggles and triumphs.
Well, we have officially wrapped up the script practice. From the aggressive, cortisol-spiking beep-beep of Paul's alarm clock to the deeply satisfying instant snap of Emily's fingers as she falls asleep, we have successfully traversed an entire human day in the English language.
To synthesize our core takeaways from this deep dive, we have meticulously traced two completely different, diametrically opposed approaches to daily routines. We explored Emily's calm, highly organized, proactive mornings and her active, structured evenings. We contrasted that directly with Paul's frantic, snooze button-driven, reactive mornings and his comedy-filled, late-night wind-downs.
We extracted vital vocabulary covering every major phase of waking life. We've looked at the food we consume, the commutes we endure, the busy email-heavy reality of office life, and the undeniable, humbling truth that our pets actually run our households.
And through it all, we saw how language acts as a mirror, revealing deep personality traits. Paul's reliance on sudden reactive verbs like grab and jump versus Emily's use of intentional verbs like make and choose perfectly illustrated the psychological difference between living a reactive life and a proactive one.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. I want to leave you with the exact question that was posed at the end of the original source material, because it's a great starting point. We want you to really honestly think about this. Are you a morning person like Emily, or an evening person like Paul? Which side of your brain is currently winning the war?
It is the great divide of the human species.
But I want to build on that. I want to pose a much deeper, entirely unmentioned thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day today. Think about the adjectives and verbs we've discussed. Do the words we use to describe our daily routines, calling our commutes boring, calling our cooking stressful, calling our mornings busy, do those specific words actually shape our physical reality?
You are touching on a profound concept in linguistics, the idea that language doesn't just describe the world, it actively constructs it.
Think about Paul. If Paul forced himself, purely as an experiment, to start using Emily's vocabulary, if instead of saying I jump out of bed because I'm late, he started intentionally saying I wake up to the quiet, even if it wasn't quite true yet, would his day fundamentally change? Does rewriting the script in your head actually change the reality of your life?
That is something for all of us to seriously consider the very next time we hear our alarm clock go off.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into the psychology of daily life vocabulary with us. We strongly encourage you to try describing your next 24 hours entirely in English, using the simple, powerful structures we've practiced today. Pay close attention to the verbs you instinctively reach for. Notice the adjectives you assign to your tasks. Notice the rhythm of your own personal stop-go, stop-go.
And remember, whether your routine is perfectly organized and serene or slightly chaotic and fueled by cookies, it is yours. It is the story of your life.
So until next time, keep your coffee strong, try your absolute hardest not to burn the water, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.